Hi, fantasy managers. My name's Tom. Back talking about F1 Fantasy ahead of the Monaco Grand Prix. We've just had FP2 3 hours ago as of the time of recording. So I wanted to chuck my final thoughts into this video. Quite a lot to discuss. A couple of, well, potentially even like three chips on the table, potentially this weekend, as well as just various assets looking good. So obviously we've got the Ferraris looking very good. FP1, FP2 surprisingly good. I personally didn't expect them to be anywhere near this strong. I mean, I knew Leclerc was good round here, and we know he's good round here, and we know Hamilton's good round here. But we didn't expect the Ferraris to be this strong the way things have been going for them this season, and where their strengths lie. But they brought a couple of upgrades here, including like a circuit-specific front suspension, I believe. So maybe that's doing the magic. Yeah, they seem fairly confident. Hamilton seemed quite upbeat in post FP2 interview, which is, Hamilton doesn't normally get that upbeat about things. He's a little bit down the dumps, I find, quite often. So the fact that Hamilton's like kind of upbeat about things is maybe a word of warning to his rivals, perhaps, that the Ferrari pace is actually real. But yeah, obviously we've still got other competition in that Ferrari slot in our teams. We've got Red Bull, Mercedes. Do we drop it down to like a Williams or something? So yeah, there's plenty to talk about in that constructor slot. Like I said, there's plenty of opportunity for potential chip usage. I've heard all sorts of like no negative, limitless, final fix. I have even considered autopilot, but I think for budget reasons I can't quite get what I want to get to for the autopilot. But I think if you've got a bit more budget than me, then autopilot could also be on the agenda. But anyway, let's get stuck into having a quick look at the FP2 times. I'm not going to dwell on it because I think we've all seen these times already, but the headlines are, FP2, when things are a bit more dialed in and some adjustments have been made between the practice sessions, we can see both the orange and the red team are looking really strong. Kind of surprisingly, the racing balls are up here. I mean, it was a bit of a disjointed session, FP2 as well as FP1, actually. Like a couple of red flags, some yellow flags interspersed in the mix, quite a lot of traffic. So the fact that these racing balls are up here is not overly surprising. The fact that maybe some of the people further back, the likes of Verstappen's and George Russell's and that sort of thing, didn't quite go up to where we'd normally expect them to see. I wouldn't expect to see the likes of Liam Lawson up here, so I'm not going to read too much into that. Alonso looked consistently good around here, and he is actually someone that's on my radar, even though he's probably almost certainly, in fact, going to drop in value. I think he's an interesting option because he's 5 million at the moment, so if he drops his probable 0.6, he hits the floor at 4.5, but then he's at 4.5, he drops off that minus 13 that's sitting from a couple of races ago, that drops off going into Spain, and suddenly at 4.5 million, Alonso, home race, 4.5 million looks really, really appealing, and he's got a good opportunity to bounce back and gain 0.6, so actually I think bringing in Alonso this week isn't the worst thing in the world, given the fact that he looks like he's potentially good for Q3, and could get some decent points there, so let's have a quick look at, before I look at my team, we'll have a look at the sims and everything here that have been released not that long ago. How long ago was it? 8 minutes. 8 minutes, I'm on the ball here. So yeah, we have a quick look at the sims because it's kind of curious where we see the Ferraris down here, like a tenth off is actually really interesting. I don't know exactly how they come to these decisions because the Ferraris clearly look very, very strong. Maybe they haven't got the Leclerc factor in here, the fact that Leclerc's just an absolute beast at Monaco. He's just so good at this track. But yeah, I'm not going to read too much into these sims, but it's very interesting to me that Ferraris are actually third best team for qualifying. Looks like the McLarens are the team to beat. And even the Red Bulls, who've perhaps got their engines turned down as they normally do on a Friday, so missing out on 2 or 3 tenths perhaps. The fact that Verstappen and Tsunoda are quite far back doesn't tell the whole story as per usual, I think, for the Red Bulls. So I think the Red Bulls could still be up there. But obviously the talk of the town is Ferraris, so it's kind of interesting that they are actually kind of only here in third place. Mercedes, a lot of us own Mercedes at the moment. Some people jumped ship to the likes of Williams or Red Bull last week, but Mercedes, myself, I own Mercedes. I'm looking to move them off at the moment, but, Mercedes are a tricky one as well because sometimes they have bad Fridays and they turn it around. And George was talking quite positively after FP2. He said, they lacked a bit of pace, but he's confident they can find it. And I do have quite a bit of faith in Russell in general in terms of qualifying. So, yeah, Mercedes is still an option, but I think the evidence that we see before us is telling us, kind of move away from them. But I wouldn't fault people if they want to stay with them. But I personally am looking away. Williams and FP1 were really strong, really, really strong. I got very excited. Like, yes, my Williams team can come to fruition. I can use them, grow some budget, open up final fix opportunities, etc. Didn't quite have that same pace and same confidence in the car in FP2. So Yeah, slightly off the Williams choo-choo train, but maybe an FP3 if they can pick it back up together, then maybe we go back down that route. But yeah, I've kind of cooled it my interest on Williams just a little bit, but I still think they're good assets, and I think Albon's a good asset. I think Sainz is a good asset. Sainz is a little bit like Fernando Alonso in a way that he's likely to probably drop in price this week, but then again, home race, another Spaniard could jump straight back up again in Spain. So Sainz is definitely an option. A little bit more expensive though than Alonso. And then we scroll down, have a look at the race pace. Again, Ferrari still in third place. Nothing really changes here. Mercedes draw a little bit closer. But yeah, maybe they sort of made that gap a little bit, and maybe the race pace is slightly more relevant than normal because of this two-stop strategy. I'm expecting come Sunday a bit of a circus with the pit stops. I think there'll be all sorts of people trying all sorts of funny things, and there'll be some amount of luck involved as to where people end up. So that factor makes me slightly concerned. If we hop over to my team, slightly concerned about picking Limitless. I think Limitless is potentially very, very strong this week. It's potentially very strong, but there are definite risks. And one of the risks is the fact that there's these two pit stops. So, if we try and lock in the top 5 qualifiers, we're not necessarily locking in the top 5 where drivers that finish the race because of this potential shuffle. I don't think it'll be shuffled dramatically, but we could see some weird stuff happening with someone shooting off in clean air, someone else getting held up. We saw it, I can't remember when it was, a year or two ago maybe, with Alonso keeping that train of people behind him for ages and ages. We could see something similar, and people pitting at weird times and stuff, lap 1 pit stop sort of thing. I'm a bit nervous about this 2 pit stop strategy in terms of Limitless. If we look at, FP2 results here show, Ferrari and McLaren look like the way forward, and we just go triple McLaren, triple Ferrari, and then probably like a Max Verstappen, I would say. You could maybe argue a George Russell in there, but I'd probably lean Max Verstappen at this stage, just because it's Max Verstappen. And I think Red Bull will improve from the Friday. I don't think they were that terrible, and I think they will improve as they always seem to do on the Saturday. So yeah, I think Limitless is very much on the table. We got obviously this whole Delta thing. All the B tier drivers are sat here, Bortolettos, Colapintos, all these guys, they're going to get 0, 1, 2 points, or maybe even some negative points. They're just not going to score points. So if we can pile in on the likes of Ferrari and McLaren because they look phenomenal, then that's great. There's great opportunity here for Limitless. But as I've already said, the two pit stops makes me slightly hesitant about that. Also, the small chance of rain, it seems to be getting smaller. This chance of rain is dwindling, but the rain in qualifying could throw things up. If you pick an Oscar Piastri or a Leclerc in your Limitless team and they just slide off in the bit of wet conditions or whatever, or even if it's not wet, they could still make a mistake in qualifying and go out in Q1, Q2, whatever, and unless they get very lucky in the race, your Limitless is kind of been there. However, if that happens to one driver, it's not the end of the world. You're still going to outscore the non-Limitless teams by quite a bit, as long as the other sort of 4 drivers do what you want them to do. If it happens to a couple of drivers, then it's starting to get really muddy. But I think, there is some concern there still. But I still think that Limitless is still on my mind. I can't help but say it's still on my mind. Again, another kind of negative for Limitless is looking at my team personally. I'm sat here with Mercedes. The budget builder says they need 30 something points, 31 or something. I can't remember off the top of my head. But and then Hadjar also potentially dropping in price. So Hadjar probably dropping. Mercedes maybe struggling to get the 0.3 rise. That underlying budget, Colapinto, Bortoletto aren't going anywhere. The underlying budget is not great if I go Limitless. It's not terrible though, so I'm not going to let it concern me too much, but it is still another factor kind of in the way of me going Limitless. But yeah, I do think that I'm still going to think about this a bit more into the evening and obviously tomorrow as to what I'm actually going to do. But I think Limitless is definitely a good opportunity, but it does come with quite a lot of risk, so I'll be putting more thought into it. I'd be really keen to know any of your guys' thoughts. Anyone who hasn't used Limitless already, are you thinking about using Limitless? I'm sure there's plenty of people out there with the same team as me or similar teams. I'd be quite curious to know in the comments what you guys are thinking, because yeah, as usual, it's just me and my own thoughts here, so I'd be kind of interested to know what you guys have got to say. So yeah, Limitless, definitely a chip on the table. The other thing would be Final Fix. I did talk about this a lot, and I was hoping, Final Fix looks great if you can go Williams and then, move Hadjar around for someone like a Gasly or a Sainz, or maybe go down this Fernando Alonso way, and then it frees up tons of money. So if Piastri doesn't have a good qualifying, you can Final Fix into a Verstappen or a Norris or whoever is at the top of the charts, top pole position. That's a good option. But I think even without this Williams build, with Williams not quite the pace that I want them to be, I think we can still use it, particularly because you know, even if we use up most of our budget or all our budget, the fact that Piastri is now more expensive, where we sort this by value, you see he's actually slightly more expensive than both Ferraris, so you don't have to put too much thought into it to use final fix to just hop from Piastri down to a Leclerc or maybe even a Hamilton if he pulls out. It looks like Leclerc more likely at the moment, but the fact that both Ferrari driver assets are cheaper than Piastri means I'm not overly concerned about leaving budget on the table. Obviously, it'd be really nice if we can work it out to have a nice team where we have the option to bring in Norris and Verstappen, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. So final fix is definitely on the table if I'm not using some other chip. Like I say, some people have even touched on the possibility of no negative. I personally wouldn't go no negative because I think there's better opportunities. I mean, I've already used my no negative in a sprint race, and I think sprint races are the best places to use it. And I don't think there's any rain in the race forecast, so there have been quite a few people going off into the barriers and into the clip in the wall and that, particularly the likes of Hajar. He looks quick, but he also looks a bit risky. So, I can see why people were thinking about no negative. I personally wouldn't go there. So it's just one massive spiel about all the different chips. But the other thing I would think about is potentially like an autopilot. And for me personally, I can't quite get there. I mean, the way I would look at autopilot is I'd have to trust someone like Williams. I mean, I could go further down. I could go crazy and go like an Aston Martin or like I don't know who else would be down there that you really want. No one, pretty much. Maybe look at the budget builder and see who the best option is, but really it's Williams and no one else really. So yeah, but anyway, if anyone's got more budget than me, then they can like get like a Leclerc in here. I don't hate it. Putting autopilot on. Don't hate it. If I had the budget for me for my team, I'd put a lot more thought into it and I'd be a bit more contemplative about it. But yeah, I think having a Leclerc, I mean, I could, for example, right now I can squeeze in a George Russell. But if I could get up to Leclerc, if you've got like $1 million, $2 million more than me or whatever in budget, I would definitely give it some more food for thought, put Leclerc in and use autopilot, because I think it could be tight between them. And there's, quite a good chance, for example, if Leclerc does get on pole, does win the race, I think there's a good opportunity for driver of the day. So having autopilot that way could work out really well. And I think Piastri has also got a potential chance to drive the day if he ends up winning. I think whoever kind of wins Monaco has a good chance of just getting drive the day, to be honest, because I can't imagine there's going to be too much more activity in the race. It's not going to be like lots of overtakes where people's attention are drawn to. I feel like largely drive the day is going to become like, who wins the race. So yeah, I think having autopilot could be an option. For me, it doesn't look like I can really get there. Even if I ship off Hajar and save a couple of points of million, still only leaves me at 23.2, so I still can't get to either the Ferraris, which are kind of annoying. So if the Mercedes look really strong, then maybe we do go on this way as well, and autopilot of Russell and Piastri. But I think it potentially a bit of a waste, because I think Piastri just more likely to outscore Russell. But I think Piastri versus Leclerc is certainly more interesting, or even Piastri versus Norris if you're doing something weird with your constructors. But let's reset the team anyway. So I've talked about kind of all the chips, and the other thing to talk about is non-chips, because I may very well use a chip, I may very well not use a chip, given how things are going at the moment. Current team is on screen. As you can see, my budget isn't spectacular, 110-ish million. I really wanted the Williams to be stronger so I could go down the Williams route, but it doesn't seem to be working out that way. Williams still look good. I'm not going to say they're off the menu. If they turn up in FP3 and they're back in the mix in the top sort of 5 or 6, I'll very much be considering the Williams build again. But for now, I think we've got to look towards Ferrari. We have to look towards Ferrari. And this is, despite the fact that we've got this simulations up and everything, and you can clearly see Red Bull right up there. And I think Red Bull is still a good option, and they are cheaper, so it means we can maybe maneuver our B-tier drivers around a little bit better. But for me personally, I have to get rid of Albon. I could get rid of Piastri and move the 2 times to someone else, but that seems like a pretty bad idea, to be honest. So yeah, I could move to Red Bull if I trust in Red Bull's improvements from Friday to Saturday, which I generally do, and I trust Verstappen, obviously. So having that covering, Tsunoda actually looks kind of okay as well. So having Red Bull could be interesting. And again, if you've got more budget, that means you can probably hold on to an Albon, but I still can't do that with my budget. So I'd have to move down, and I'll probably be moving down to, like I said, I've already touched on it. I'm not going to go into great detail at the moment, but I've touched on potentially Carlos Sainz dropping down in price, maybe hopping back in Spain, so getting some points from him. Potentially Gasly again, a confidence driver. He loves it around Monaco, has a good record round here, is quite nice and cheap, and he's quite easy to get a budget. I think he needs 0 points to get the 0.2 rise, so Gasly's quite a nice option. The other option, like I say, I'm considering, again, Hulkenberg is fine. He doesn't excite me, but he's potentially good for a budget rise. The other person that really does interest me, like I've touched on earlier on in the video, is Fernando Alonso. This works with Red Bull and also works with Ferrari, because I think Ferrari, if we base our thoughts purely on like FP1, FP2, then Ferrari are looking like the clear pick over Red Bull, but I still think Red Bull are going to come back strong on Saturday, so watch that space. But I think for now we'll have Ferrari in here, because I think Ferrari, if I was going to go Limitless, for example, I'll be doing triple Ferrari more so than a triple Red Bull for sure. So I think Ferrari got the nod ahead of Red Bull, but I think Red Bull is still in consideration. I'm strongly considering a team that looks like this, and I can also get rid of Hadjar. I'm not sure about Hadjar. I'm not sure, because I think he is, again, potentially like Q3 material. We could see him qualify P8, P9, P10. I wouldn't be surprised to see him there. He looks good. He does also look a bit scary because he's clipped the wall a couple of times. So that does concern me. We obviously saw what happened in Australia, where he wasn't feeling super confident and went off before the race started. Are we seeing the same sort of things again? He does look quick. Can't deny that. But is he lacking in confidence? So maybe I have to use like all 3 transfers. But then again, who am I picking? Maybe we go up to Carlos Sainz and we just suck up this kind of budget loss potential here. Well, likelihood is that Sainz and Alonso are both going to drop budget. But I think going into Spain, they've both got good opportunity for gaining budget back, particularly Alonso, because he's going to be at 4.5, because he loses that minus 13 that's sitting on his record from a couple of races ago. That goes off going into Spain. So I really like Alonso. I think he's going to be very popular going into Spain. So why not get ahead of the curve? The reason for getting ahead of the curve is because you want to save the budget. There's no guarantee he'll jump back up in budget in Spain, but I think he's good for points. I feel like he might be good for points. But that said, I do also feel like whenever I pick Alonso, something horrible something horrible happens. He seems to be a bit cursed when I put him in my team. There always seems to be something going on, something unlucky, and don't know. So maybe that's just me being superstitious. But so I'm not sure I really want to double up on the 2 guys that are definitely like kind of going to drop budget. So maybe it's sensible to go someone like Gasly, who looks a lot more likely to at least not drop budget and can potentially gain some budget reasonably comfortably. The other option, like I say, is probably Hulkenberg. Otherwise, you kind of save a transfer, stick with Hadjar, and go in with 3 transfers into Spain, which reminds me of another negative for using Limitless, because obviously you come out of Limitless, you lose your free transfer. So obviously I've got 3. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can. I've got 3 transfers up here available this week. If I use Limitless now, when Spain opens up again, I'm going to lose that extra transfer, and it'll just be 2. I only have 2 free transfers. So Limitless is a bit of a bit frustrating in that regard. The fact that I've saved this transfer kind of makes me feel like I should be owed it when I'm coming out the other end of Limitless. But there you go. That's a different story for a different day. But yeah, my thinking is somewhere on these lines. I would like to only use 2 transfers if I'm not using a chip of some description, and this does also enable me to get up to anyone apart from Norris. Again, I'm 0.2 short, so maybe I can't get that money else or anywhere. I've got the 3 cheapest options already here, so Hadjar is not going to go anywhere in that regard. So I can't quite get to Norris, and I think Norris is, would be nice to be able to get to him. Anyone who's got 0.2 more in the bank than me can get there, and maybe that's another reason to go Red Bull over Ferrari if Red Bulls do look good in FP3. But right now my thinking is the red car, red and orange. That's where my thinking is. So yeah, the other thing to say is I wouldn't be looking to move in Leclerc, even if he looks like really strong. I think it's probably like a 1-track, 1-weekend thing for Ferrari being this strong. So I don't want to go all in on Ferrari. I want Piastri most likely for Spain, even though they've got the whole technical directive thing going on there. So it could be some changing up in the order, but he's also like very likely to get a 0.3 rise, whereas Leclerc looks more likely to drop like 0.1 potentially, something like that. So I'd rather just use the final fix as like a transfer that also gets me the 0.3 rise, to be honest. Like, that could be a 0.4 price differential with Piastri going up 0.3, Leclerc like dropping 0.1. So I'd kind of be okay using final fix as a bit of a extra transfer in a way, which also gains me 0.4 million. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm thinking. It is tight. It's very tight. Going into this weekend, did not expect Ferrari to be as strong as they are, but they are, so we need to adapt, and Ferrari are clearly in the thinking. Past that, I think Red Bull are going to improve. I think they're definitely options there. Mercedes, again, I think they'll improve as well, but they just don't look quite there. They don't seem to have the right balance going on at the moment, so perhaps Mercedes are just on the chopping block for a vast amount of teams. And again, Williams, they look decent, but they're not quite there yet, but we'll see with FP3 if they make some improvements overnight. So right now, of all of these guys, I think my thinking is leaning towards Ferrari. That's why Limitless is still very much on the table. I think Ferrari have got to be the favourites, despite what despite what the F1 official sims say. The fact that Red Bull are right up here, the feeling and the timings here and everything. Like, what's the difference between the Red Bulls here? They're 7/10 down. I know they've probably got their engines turned down. Maybe the Ferraris are turned up or whatever. But 7/10 is quite a lot. It's quite a lot. And I know they'll maybe make some changes overnight and Red Bull will improve. Will they make up 7/10? Don't know. So maybe Ferrari just are the way to go. But indecisive at the moment because still processing some thoughts. Still got a night to sleep on it. Still got FP3 to think about it. So we're still not quite in the locking in the team. But if I'm not using a chip, my team will probably look something like this. Like I say, Alonso seems kind of to go against the budget builder seems a bit wrong, but I do think it's kind of okay because you're only gonna, the most you can lose if you invest at 5 million of Alonso, the most you can lose is 500,000, and he may well just jump that back up next week. So who knows? This is kind of where I'm at. Plenty of chip potential on the table. So yeah. Hope you've enjoyed me just kind of spilling out my thoughts this Friday evening. So yeah, if you have, please give the video a like and I'll catch you soon. Thanks very much. Bye for now.